The story of Yud Beis Tamuz begins Beis Nissen Tov Reish Pei with the passing, the Istalkus of the Rebbe Rashab. At that time in Russia, it was just after the revolution. The Tsar was thrown over. There was a period of confusion with the Bolsheviks, and then the communists took over. And in order for them to amass their control, they decided that they must take control of religion, and especially Yiddishkeit. The Frierdiker Rebbe, within the first year of his Nesius, became very sick, and the Chassidim weren't sure what will be. It was between Bein HaChaim Lamaves, and through Rachamei Shemayim, the Frierdiker Rebbe got better, and he continued his fight against the communist regime. A few years later, in Tov Reish Pei Gimel, the Frierdiker Rebbe gathered 10 Chassidim. Chassidim, we don't know exactly, but we assume that Shmuel Levitin, Reb Chani Merazov, Reb Chatzah Fagin, legendary Chassidim. And together, they made a bond, they made a Krisis Bris, they made a Shvuah, that they will go on Mesiras Nefesh to build and continue Yiddishkeit across Russia. And many of these Chassidim gave the ultimate sacrifice, the sacrifice of their life for spreading Yiddishkeit. But as we heard from the Rebbe moments before, that the main idea that the communists were after, they didn't care if they built shuls or built mikvahs or studied Torah with adults. What the communists were after was for the chinuch of young children, especially before bar and bas mitzvah. The Rebbe goes further to say on Gimel Tamuz Tavshin Nun Aleph that had the communists been successful, then not only would they have taken the life of the Frierdiker Rebbe, but the entire activities of Lubavitch. That means the continuous chain from the Alter Rebbe to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and everything that the Frierdiker Rebbe was doing with the Chassidim would end. And the Frierdiker Rebbe went on Mesiras Nefesh and jeopardized all that just for the sake of being mechanech young children before bar and bas mitzvah. What that means in today's terminology, in Tavshin Ayin Tes 2019, is for us in Lubavitch to take the crown jewels of our moistus, the most beautiful buildings like the Shul in Bel Harbor, the Kinus Chabad building at the Koisel, the Menorah building in Ukraine, with our prized moistus that we find so much pride, like the JLI and Chabad on campus and the Friendship Circle. And we mortgage all these moistus just to pay the teachers in Beis Rivka. But this is true. This actually happened. In the early 40s, during the time of the war, in 1942 or 1943, Torah Vadas was going through a very hard time until the financial officer of Torah Vadas was ready to give up. He couldn't continue. It was a time of war, intense poverty, and there was a loan on the building, and the bank was going to pull the loan. Last minute desperation, he put an ad in the paper and said, "Help, I'm going to lose the yeshiva." Rabbi Shmuel Koslevich tells the story. He was part of the Anhal of Torah Vadas, and that's how we know what happened. The head of the financial office gets a call from the Frierdiker Rebbe's office and asks, "How much is the loan? How much money do you need?" And he thinks the Frierdiker Rebbe just came from Europe, lost everything in Russia, and lost everything in Poland. What can he offer Torah Vadas? But he has no choice. He says how much he needs. The Frierdiker Rebbe sends the next day one of his secretaries and comes to the office of Torah V'das and says, here is the money that you need. And then the chassid continues and says, please pay us back when you can, because here the Frierdiker Rebbe gave you everything that he has. The Frierdiker Rebbe gave away the deed of 770, the house that he lived, the shul that he davened, and the yeshiva that he built, and any other Moised Chabad that he had, just to save a yeshiva, a non-Lubavitch yeshiva, just a yeshiva that was teaching Torah. But this was then. Today, times are different. The Rebbe told my grandfather, Rabbi Leib Kramer on Yechidus, my grandfather, Rabbi Kramer, was part of the Anhola of the yeshiva in Montreal, and every month, Anhola Yeshiva of Montreal would go to New York to go into Yechidus together with the Anhola of 770. And it was during one of these Yechidus that the Rebbe said that there were three differences, but I only mention one tonight, between the time of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe lived in a time of intense poverty. He never had money. He always struggled to raise money. The Rebbe said, but it's there. The Rebbe said, "Ich will $5 million, kann ich es haben auf den Tisch morgen." If I want to have $5 million, I could have it tomorrow on the table. And this was the early 70s. $5 million was an astronomical sum, a huge amount of money. And the Rebbe can have it. And we see in Lubavitch, Baruch Hashem, we have wealth, we have abundance. In 1986, there was a couple, a Lubavitcher couple from Australia, Michal Meyer and his wife, Mrs. Goldhirsch. They invested in property, and they sold the property, and they made a lot of money. And they decided that they will take $1 million. This is 1986. $1 million goes a long way. It still goes today, but then it goes much further. And they decide that they're going to take that money and give it to the Rebbe, that the Rebbe should build a children's hospital in Crown Heights that would operate under the realm of halacha. That this would be a kosher hospital for 6 children in Crown Heights. They contacted Rabbi Krinsky. Rabbi Krinsky relayed the message to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said that's not a good idea. And the Rebbe wrote to the Goldhirsches a long letter, 2.5 pages. This letter was never printed, and actually today, in honor of the Kinus Mechanchos Chabad, the Goldhirsches released the letter. You have this letter printed as a memento from the convention in your welcome bag. And the Rebbe writes that a much better idea than giving the money to a children's hospital is to invest in chinuch. Because aside from other practical considerations, says the Rebbe, the best way of implementing your intention and to achieve even greater results is to apply your contribution to Torah true chinuch. And then the Rebbe continues on the last page. And by the way, this letter is connected to Yud Beis Tamuz, was written on the 15th of Tamuz. And the Rebbe says, in light of the above, it is my considered opinion that if your tzedakah is used in this way, it would be in the real spirit and letter of your idea and intention. For used in this way, it will help ensure healthy children, physically, mentally, and spiritually, so that there will be no need to establish a special hospital for the children according to halacha, since they will be raised fully in accordance with halacha. So investing in chinuch, not only does it help us spiritually, but also begashmis. There's no need for a hospital. And this is the greatest investment. And I'd like to take a moment to thank all those that invest in Chinuch, that donate to Chinuch, that contribute to Chinuch. And I want to take a moment and ask for our Refuah Shlema, for a dear friend who's a big Taimach in Chinuch, Rabbi Zalman Ben Henya Naomi, that he should have a complete refuah. And also want to take a moment to thank Mr. Yosef Yitzchak and Batsheva Popak for their generous contribution to this convention. And lastly, I would like to thank a dear friend, Mr. Allen and his wife, Lori Zackelman, who they have made it their priority that their tzedakah should go to build chinuch. They are true stewards in the Rebbe's garden. They are the ones that believe in every single one of you and the role that you play for chinuch. And I want to bench them with tremendous atzlach at everything they do and true chassidish nachas from their children. This is the times that we live in. We have great abundance. We have great wealth. But what are we going to do with our abundance? What are we going to do with our wealth? The Rebbe says the best investment possible is to invest in chinuch. And each one of you have made that investment, have made that Mesiras Nefesh. Today, we don't have to give up our life. We have to live our life. And each one of you, each mechanech and each mechaneches has made the ultimate Mesiras Nefesh, to live their life, to dedicate their life, to be mechanchim. The Rebbe has said that the call of the hour, the most important thing today, is the chinuch of our children. But when the Rebbe said it, many of us may have not heard it. But today, in our time, in Tov Shnei Tes, we all know that is to be true. There is not a family, there is not a parent that isn't concerned about the chinuch of their children. There is not a father or mother that looks to the school, that looks to their teacher for the chinuch of their child. You in this room are the most important people in our community. And in the spirit, as the Rebbe has taught us, that today Mesiras Nefesh doesn't mean that we have to give up our life, but quite the contrary. The greatest brachas come to our life. The Rebbe said those that are in chinuch live rich lives. Rich not just in wealth, but rich in happiness and nachas from our children. And all the brachas that the Rebbe has taught us should all go to everybody in chinuch. And I know this personally because I grew up in such a family. My parents are mechanchim. My father's a teacher, my mother's a teacher. And I know the life of growing up in a house of chinuch. And so let us together, as far as the voices of this kinus, and all of us that have invested in chinuch with our feet and involved in chinuch, let us declare that on this day, on Yud Beis Tamuz Tov Shnei Tes, chinuch should be the greatest priority in our community. Not because it needs to be, because it has to be. And it is the greatest priority. So anybody that is wondering what they want to do, what shlichus they should go into Karmei Shali, in the garden of the Rebbe and the chinuch of our children. If anybody has money and wants to invest in the Rebbe's inyanim, where should he put it? As the Rebbe told Mr. Goldhirsch, the best investment is in chinuch. And together, through our collective efforts of chinuch, may we be zoicha to the ultimate chinuch, into what we're all striving for, to the inyan of dir b'tachtonim, with the coming of Mashiach, when we'll be together with our Rebbe and say, Ru'u Gedulim Shekidalnu.